And we'll just give it a moment just to get any delay. Okay. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to episode 8 of the India Reach series, Aerospace Defence and Security Market Trends and Opportunities for Australia and the ASEAN region. My name is Chris Covage. I'm the Executive Editor and Director for My Security Media and the My Security Marketplace, and we are joined by our partners, the Aerospace and Defence Consultants Association of India, and my co-host Raman Sapori there in Delhi. Raman, thank you very much for joining us again.
Thank you, Chris.
Very good. Episode 8, when we set out 8 episodes ago, early July, we said let's try and get through India's Independence Day on the 15th of August, and we have achieved that. And once again, we are joined by an esteemed panel. We are joined by Mr. Vinay Gupta, the Trade Commissioner for the High Commission of Canada, Mr. P.A. Praveen, the Director of Aerospace and Defence for the Government of Telangana, Rear Admiral Devendra Sudan of Strategic Pathways, Air Vice Marshal Arvinda Agrawal, and Mr. Bharat Malkani, the Chairman for Max Aerospace Group. Gents, thank you very much for joining us there. And I believe you're spread between Delhi and Mumbai and obviously in Telangana, correct?
That's
yes,
right.
we're all spread around.
Yes.
Very good. So as we do week to week, the actual panel session that we will run here today will sort of cover off, we're obviously talking about, well, we're not obviously, but this week we are talking about the MRO industry trends, maintenance, repair and overhaul of aerospace sector. And obviously we are focusing in more on the defence and aerospace on this particular episode. And I will admit that MRO, maintenance, repair and overhaul, is not my area of expertise. So I think, Raman, you're in your comfort spot on this particular episode as well. Mr. Gupta is going to kick off with a presentation, just giving an international perspective. Then we'll hear from Mr. Bharat Malkani on civil aerospace. Then we'll hear from Mr. Praveen, looking at a state government perspective in India in terms of aerospace and defence. And then we'll open it up for Rear Admiral Devendra Sudan, looking at from a perspective of Naval and Coast Guard, and Air Vice Marshal Arvinda Agrawal from the perspective of the Air Force. As we do week to week, we cover off on what we've been covering. Episode 7 is now available on our YouTube channel. It was a very good session last week, looking at 3D printing technology and the applications of advancements in aerospace sector, and in particular, Dr. Chandra from WePro there gave a very good presentation, and that session has actually been quite popular on our YouTube channel also. And as we mentioned, episode 8, all our previous episodes are available on a India virtual educational series playlist on YouTube, so they're all available, and we've had quite an esteemed set of guests over the week, including Dr. Toby Speakin, the Australian Ambassador for Cyber Affairs and Critical Technology, and Mr. Men Chanda, the Trade and Investment Commissioner to India for the New South Wales Government. So Mr. Gupta, thank you very much for joining us in terms of another Trade Commissioner, this time for Canada. As we do week to week, just some news that has been developing. This one's from Raman in terms of the Global Trade Hub and India's strategic economic interest in the Indo-Pacific region, launching the, let me get this right, Andaman and Nicobar Islands, connecting them with the mainland with an undersea optic fibre cable. I like this statement here. The Indian Ocean region has been the centre of India's trade and strategic prowess for millennia. And I will be touching on how we are shifting from the India Reach series to the Indo-Pacific series. And this kind of underlines why we are doing that. Some technical news, just some reports out of Delararo Group, spending on data center switches to grow calendar year at 4% for the next sort of 5 years through to 2024, and about 6% for network security and ADC, data center appliance market. And again, these are pretty much in line with what we have covered off on the ITC sector as well. From Raman, mentioned the Air India Express with a pay cut for employees with 88% drop in revenues. And likewise, I thought I'd just have a look at recent news from Virgin Australia cutting 3,000 jobs. So I think those two underline the impact on the aviation sector that we are seeing due to COVID-19. 2021 Australian Defence Sales Catalogue submissions is now open. So the 2020 is available for viewing at defence.gov.au, and to get into the Defence Suppliers Catalogue is now open through till 27th of September. And again, if you go to defence.gov.au, export Australian military sales, and that is something that we'll have in the show notes also. Some news on the EA-18G Growler, new agreement signed to enhance that capability. For those who don't know, the Growler is a next generation jammer system with looking at new, unique, high-end capability to disrupt, deceive and deny military electronic systems, radars and communications. And that news came out of the Defence Minister's office. And this video is also available on our YouTube channel, the Australian Army giving a demonstration of their remote and autonomous systems. And they've got a series of armoured personnel carriers now on remote, optionally crewed combat vehicles, OCCVs, increasing that fleet to about 20 vehicles. Yeah, the video is quite interesting to watch. Goes only for a couple of minutes, but again, been quite of interest. And that's getting supported by BAE Systems Australia. Some recent reports up on our marketplace, in particular Smart City Standards from Australia Standards, Open Source Security Risk Analysis report from Synopsys. The Australian Cyber Security Strategy 2020 was released last Thursday to mixed reviews, I will say, and we're going to touch on that in 2 episodes time. I'm going to put a panel together and we'll look at National Cybersecurity Strategy. And as it happens next week, we're going to touch on that Smart Cities Standard Roadmap as well as we move forward in the series, and Thousand Eyes, or the 2020 Internet Performance Report. Now, I mentioned we've been running with 8 episodes on the India Reach series, and we've got to keep it fresh and constantly changing. So the concept here is we're going to move to doing an Indo-Pacific series, pretty much staying on the same content. Let me flip off. I didn't know the music was going to be so loud. And next week, episode 1 of that particular series, we're going to look at smart city strategy and public safety. So yeah, stay tuned with us as we move forward. And Raman, hopefully we can get someone from the Smart Nation strategy on India as well and have a look at these two and how they're looking. So looking forward to that one. Just moving forward now, this Thursday we are running a Women in Cybersecurity in Singapore virtual awards night. That's 7 o'clock Singapore time. So I think that might be, I can't work it out in terms of India time, but you're welcome to join us. And this, with the Women in Security and Resilience Alliance with Bonnie Butlin, they recently ran one with these in India. And we do have the Women in India series with SEFGRA. So it's something that we'll reach out to Bonnie with, and we'll get some of the women in cybersecurity in India on the episode also in future. But if you've got nothing to do on Thursday night, welcome to tune in, and we're going to run that live on YouTube as well. Something else we're doing, given that we're in the ASEAN sector with this series, we're also promoting the IBM Security Virtual Summit on the 3rd of September. So if you're in the ASEAN region and you're into cybersecurity and have interest with IBM, you're welcome to join us for that particular episode also. So on that note, we're going to kick off, and Mr. Gupta, if I can put you on notice as I warm up the slides. Raman, and let me take the opportunity, we've pretty much covered on all of this content that we've set out to do. And it's been a pleasure working with you on this particular series as we move on to the next series as well. There's not much that we haven't touched, and we'll continue to do so. But as I said, we'll just keep it fresh. And I think we're going to run like a 10 series episode for the Indo-Pacific series, and then we'll move on to doing something more of interest as well. So with that note, let's get this panel underway. And just bear with me while I get the Commissioner's slides up and running. One second. Okay,
yes,
you should see that. Wonderful. Over to you, Mr. Gupta. Thank you very much. And I don't have your profile right in front of me, but if you could give a bit of your background, please. I'm sorry. Or Raman, if you've got that, happens to be in front of you. But we'll hand over to Mr. Vinay Gupta. Mr. Gupta, have we got you there? Raman, you can hear me okay, I take it?
Mr. Gupta is not online?
I can see his screen. He's not muted.
Can you hear me?
That's it. Thank you, Mr. Gupta.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Yes, we can hear you, sir.
Okay, wonderful. So thank you very much, ADCI, for inviting me to speak in this webinar. And we have a very learned panel of speakers here. And my idea in terms of just providing you some slides about the Canadian aerospace and defense industry, as well as the MRO industry, and then related with some of the latest developments that are happening here in India and in terms of India's ambitions in the MRO sector. And that's what I just want to take you through. I won't take too much of your time.
Right.
Yes, Chris. So globally, Canada ranks first in the civil flight simulation, third in the civil engines production, and fourth in the civil aircraft production. Canada is the only nation in the top 5 of all key 5 sector categories. That's what I just want to highlight through this slide. Montreal region is one of the rare places in the world where you can buy almost all the components for an aircraft within 30-kilometer radius. Approximately 80% of Canada's aerospace sector is civil and 20% is military. In terms of the aerospace market, Canada is the 5th largest aerospace market in the world. In terms of revenues, $24 billion in 2019. We're supporting about 213,000 jobs. And as I don't want to read all the information in the slides, which you, of course, is just in front of you.
Okay.
Now, in terms of the defense and security sector, Canada has a lot of bandwidth. We have organizations like GD Land Systems, Ultra Electronics, and many more of those which have based their production operations in India. And some of the items, as you can see from the slide, where Canadian defense and security firms have been active, includes the special mission aircraft, torpedo detection systems, signature suppression systems, secure avionics and communications for specialized planes, bomb protection and disposal systems, night vision systems, access control systems, etc. So that just gives you a very broad idea as to where the Canadian defense and security sector lies. Next one, please. Now, I want you to take you through the Canadian aerospace industry ecosystem. As you can see here, the aerospace industry is intersecting with the space industry, with the defense industry, and the MRO industry. So 93% of aerospace manufacturing firms in Canada, they are exporters and exporting to over 190 countries across all the continents. Close to 50% of Canadian exports are supply chain oriented. Next one. This slide basically gives you an idea about the distribution, regional distribution of the Canadian manufacturing, aerospace manufacturing, and the MRO industry. The MRO sector, as you see, represents about 27% of the total Canadian aerospace activities. And you will note that the Western Canada is more prominent in terms of the MRO activities. And according to the Aerospace Industries Association of Canada, Canada has the second largest fleet of civil helicopters in the world. And that has led to development of service capabilities for most models of helicopters used in North America and Europe. Over 25% of Canada's MRO activities are in defense sector. You can see from the slide that about 41% of the MRO occurs in Western Canada. Now, if you just try to dwell into the depth of the MRO industry in Canada, we have 850 certified aircraft maintenance organizations, which we call it like AMOs, with a comprehensive range of capabilities. Canada's MRO sector generates $7.7 billion in annual revenues and directly employs about 31,000 highly skilled workers. Very interestingly, if you look at the Canada's MRO sector, growth in the MRO sector has been much more than the Canadian aerospace sector alone, like in terms of percentage of growth in the MRO sector, vis-a-vis the aircraft manufacturing. The next one, please. Yeah. This basically, it gives an indication of like what I mentioned earlier about what is the Canadian aerospace sector relation in terms of the supply chain, the landing gear, avionics, and aero engines and other components. Next one, please. Most recent. Now, what are the growth drivers for Canada's MRO sector? As we have been witnessing OEMs, including Airbus, Boeing, they're expanding into the aftermarket services. New generation aircrafts are more using composite materials and are more sensor based. There's lots of predictive maintenance, which is now available in terms of new generation aircrafts. So big data analytics using of AR, VR, and 3D printed parts, like you guys just had a webinar on 3D printing. So all of these are main growth areas for Canada's MRO sector. Next one. Now, what are the areas which are prominent in Canada's MRO sector? See, more on the turboprop side, turbofan and helicopter engines, airframes, landing gears, avionics, cabin interiors, aircraft modifications and conversions. Yeah. Next one, please. Now, this is one of the areas where I just wanted to talk a little bit in terms of how some of the recent announcements that we have heard from India's defense sector and also from India's commerce minister in terms of having an ambition of India's civil aviation industry getting in terms MRO getting involved with defense sector as well. So I see there is a lot of activities which could be envisaged in the years to come for in India's MRO sector. And this is where I would like to draw some parallels in terms of what Canada has done right in order to reach today's position in aerospace sector. I'm just trying to plant some seeds, and we have a very learned panel, and there might be some kind of a need for a comprehensive plan in order to reach the ambitions that India has in the aerospace sector, including the MRO sector. So, what were the key elements for Canada? One, availability of skilled labor. Canada has, aerospace industry has a deep talent pool, employing about 89,000 workers with highly world-class educated higher education system in the aviation sector. Logistics and market access. Canada has a highly developed transportation infrastructure and duty-free access to US, Mexico, and other global markets under NAFTA. Duty-free manufacturing tariff regime. Canada is one of the first countries in G20 to offer tariff-free zone for industrial manufacturers. There are no tariffs on manufacturing inputs. Investors can import advanced machinery and equipment free of import duties. They can get straight line depreciation that allows to write off capital investment in Canada. Government of Canada and industry has worked very comprehensively in terms of the trying to promote innovation in this sector. Government has been providing a lot of resources to stimulate innovation by reducing the cost associated with R&D. We have a number of institutions like the National Research Council, the Industrial Research Assistance Program, etc. We have system for providing income tax credits, refunds for expenditure on eligible R&D activities. The Canadian government has a risk-sharing investment program for the industry so as to encourage the R&D in the aerospace sector. And then lastly, in terms of the sales financing, Canada has Export Development Corporation, which is equivalent to the Exim Bank in India, to provide the aircraft sales financing support, as well as other for support to the exports from Canada. So some of these areas which I believe India can think and take some leaves out of Canadian experience in order to achieve the ambition in the MRO domain. These were some of my thoughts that I thought I would like to share. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Gupta, and we've got your details up on the screen. I did have one question from the audience and give them the opportunity. Are you aware of any talks with Indian companies in what area? You mentioned there's quite a bit of strong growth there, but are you able to sort of define what area there are current sort of trade and deals going on?
It's a whole lot of variety of areas in terms of the aerospace sector. Especially, I would like to refer avionics, and we'd like to mention there are talks going on with in terms of the rotary wing MRO. So some of these, like I can have a direct offline talk with the question with the person who's put up the question.
Fair enough, Raman. We'll be able to capture the person if they want to follow that up. we can allow that to happen. Well, look, without further ado, we'll keep going, and we'll hear from. I've just got to change slides, but from Mr. Malkani. Mr. Malkani, have you got your slides on your computer by chance, or do you want me to run through them for you?
I do have them, Chris. I'm not sure I know how to upload them, but they're on my desktop.
Yeah, but have you got them ready to go, or do you want me to
Yep,
walk through them?
I have them ready to go.
Okay, let me hand over to you, and we didn't do a pre-practice, so bear with us. You should get a prompt up on your screen.
Show my screen.
So we can see your screen, your Gmail. You just need to bring that. That's the one.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Ah, beautiful. Over to you, Mr. Malkani. Thank you.
Okay, gentlemen, thank you. First of all, Chris, how much time do I have? So let me get my timer on.
I think about 10 minutes would be great.
Excellent. So just let me put my clockwork on. So good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on which part of the world you gentlemen are and ladies. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Thank you, Ramanji, for making this happen, and a happy Janmashtami to all. Now, so what I'm going to do is really speak a little bit about how India's potential as an MRO hub can be opened up. For those who came in late and those who understand, India has been at the cusp of wanting to do MRO for, well, most of our 70 years. And we've had extremely hostile fiscal policies historically. All of these assured that it was impossible to do MRO. Now, this has changed, and it has genuinely changed, and full credit to the current government. And I'm not here to make a political statement or a government statement, but they've really put their heart, mind, and souls into doing this. And what they have done is taken, first of all, the single largest program of GST for Indian MRO was at 18% and imported was at 5%. So Indian MROs come down to 5% as well. Plus, if you do it as a subcontractor for foreign companies, that's going to go even further low. But before getting into specific issues, let me tell you a little bit about us. So we are one of India's pioneering MRO companies, the only company with a comprehensive FAE-EASA approval, as well as approvals from Ministry of Defense and government. We do MRO for both civil and military and have been doing so for now 25 years. Are you guys able to see the screen? Chris, am I with you? Because I only see the screen. I don't necessarily see anything else. Is that how it works?
Fair enough. No, keep going the way you were going.
Okay. So why MRO? Well, with the largest and the fastest growing Indian business in aviation is actually MRO, because we have merely scratched the surface insofar as the airline industry is concerned, or the general aviation industry is concerned, or the military industry is concerned. We have a CAGR of the airline growth pre-COVID at almost 20%. I am no way of knowing what is going to happen post-COVID. I am not an oracle. Nonetheless, we have grown to almost 600 aircraft in the last 10 odd years, from a measly 40 to 50 aircraft. This growth will continue unless there is a dramatic change in the globe due to this pandemic. But let's assume this happens. Insofar as an aircraft is concerned, the second highest cost after fuel is MRO. So there is a genuine case for MRO, and in our country, it is surprising to note that the total amount of MRO done in country is less than 10%. So we mapped up this information with the Ministry of Civil Aviation, and we estimated that in the year ended this March, that is 2020, we had imported in excess of $1 billion of MRO. And if you think about it, that is a huge number for a country that does so much more in engineering, be it IT, be it automotives, be it electronics. and there is a definite gap, and this gap needs to be filled. There are challenges, undoubtedly, even today. We are beginning to overcome them. Here's your market size, the growth of civil and defense MRO. Present market size of civil is about $1 billion. Defense, we estimate in excess of $1 billion year on year. The defense MRO has historically been a personal fiefdom of the government companies, the DPSUs as we call them, Defense Public Sector Utilities. However, we expect that is changing. There is genuine effort on the government to allow private industry as well to enter this domain. The DPSUs are massive. They're actually bigger than the likes of any of the MROs in the world, substantially. Nonetheless, they are quite capable of delivering MRO, perhaps a fusion model of what the government calls the GOCO, government-owned company operated, or the private-public partnership, PPP, may be the way forward. This is what we spoke about, the share of the MRO by the MRO companies in the world. If you see this thing, and I'm not sure how well you can see it, the extreme right, the smallest little pie there is India at 0.04. The largest, and of course, one of the biggest in our country as well in terms of how they do, is Lufthansa Technik and Air France-KLM. They control a substantial percentage of the market share in India as well. The rest is shared by other foreign MROs. We're hoping to see the last skyscraper, which is the Indian skyscraper, climb. We believe that India can not just do its own MRO, but given the scale of its people and the level of education and the infrastructure that is also readily available. And now when I say readily available, it's not yet in the private sector, but in the government sector, this could grow to 5 times the size in 10 years. As difficult as this may sound to a lot of non-believers, it's true because you've got the infra already built. You've got the government finally supporting you and pushing. What I heard from Vinay Gupta was very interesting, and I will reach out to him and request him to give a list of the kind of policies his government in Canada follows. It's something that we from the even MRO Association and ADCI must present to Ministry of Civil Aviation. Obviously, Canada has got a extremely strong and robust working policy model. But going back to this slide, this is where we stand. In 2016, our Honorable Prime Minister released NCAP. NCAP stands for the National Civil Aviation Policy. And the fundamental reason for doing this was to create genuinely an MRO hub in this country. For those who heard our finance minister in the early part of COVID, PM came back on the national television and talked of MRO. So obviously this is now a focus sector. The policy is all mentioned here. Some of the challenges of the policy remain, but for example, if you see exemption of customs duty on toolkits, test equipment, which Vinay spoke about, is a classic example of a restraint that we had as a nation on being able to do, or extension of duty free. So you bought spares in to do work for an aircraft. Within 6 months, it had to be either used on the aircraft or returned. But there is no way any company on an MRO at a certain level of size can necessarily predict which aircraft is coming, and the spare is not being kept for any other purpose. But this has been changed to 3 years, and that is a huge advantage. These policy initiatives are not all yet put into place. We are still working with the government, and the one which is the last one here, cancellation of airport royalty and charges, is the major effort that we are making at this point of time, because it is definitely something that makes MRO go away from India as opposed to coming to India. What are the growth drivers? Clearly, cost saving for the airlines. In the post-COVID world, even a greater cost saving for the airline, because it's not going to be easy right now to do. Even cargo prices are up, costs are up, labor arbitrage is up. Sometimes labor is not available. So there's going to be a huge saving, and if the airlines are going to survive, they're going to see that it's going to be better to do MRO locally. The lease back model for the airlines. Many of airlines buy aircraft and lease back. When these aircraft are leased back to the original owners, they have to be certified, and the certification necessarily requires both domestic and international. Should these be done locally? A lot of this was being done abroad. There are some companies now willing and capable of doing it locally. It is another cost saving. The Indian government has come with a massive regional connectivity scheme, which allows for turboprops and smaller aircraft to connect the areas. The airline operators have the value of being able to get some kind of a subsidy from the government as well. Growth driver, MRO, no doubt about it. And insofar as defense, which my colleague will take over, I'll just say that the total value of the defense MRO is so large that it is almost embarrassing as an Indian. Despite the fact that we have developed a fair amount of infrastructure, too much of our defense work is done outside, and there is now a chance to perhaps do it in India with the kind of support our government is giving. In the final analysis, and before I get into things, the three major hurdles that we find. One, there is lack of a policy, which is now in the NCAP, still to be implemented, to allow more space at airports. It is not necessary that it has to be at all the secondary and tertiary airports. Even our primary airports do have the capability to absorb MRO hangars, and this must be given out. Historically, airport lands were given for parking of private companies' aircraft. Skill development, there is a huge effort going on in what is known as convergence of civil and defense, where the large manpower that comes out from the military can be deployed for MRO on the civil side. These people are normally well-trained, disciplined, and usually fit despite having retired at between mid-40 to mid-50. And custom processes that we have need some more changes, and we'll get into that independently. But these are the three major issues that we see are at this point lacking. Should we be able to overcome them? I think what we see today is the 10% of MRO being done locally going to 100% would probably be more like 400 or 500% in the coming years, where India can become a hub for all the MRO companies around. Over to you, Chris, so I can give my closing remarks without this monitor.
Thank you very much for that, Mr. Malkani. Very, very interesting. I think it's a good lead into Mr. Praveen. I'm just going to come back with the screen just to bring up the panel as we should see it. Let's hope it works. Thank you. In fact, what I might do is I might stop sharing and we can just see the panel, because we've got Rear Admiral Sudan on screen. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm glad you got your camera sorted. Just 1 second. And I did have, well, it's not so much a question, more of an offer from one of the audience who says that they're both located in India and in Canada and would like to be involved with particularly with you, with that Max Aerospace group. So we'll send through some details there of one of the audience there who seems quite keen to assist. Mr. Praveen, thank you so much. And just for the panelists, I've got Rear Admiral Sudan's camera upside down on my view, but on the audience view, he's flipped back up, so he's not appearing upside down. Looks like you're defying gravity there, Mr. Sudan, to me, but to the audience view, you look fine. Your camera's flipped back over. So just for the panelists. Mr. Praveen, you are at the state of Telangana, if I pronounced that correctly. Welcome you to introduce yourself and your role in aerospace and defence.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Praveen. I lead the Aerospace and Defence Sector Initiatives for the State Government of Telangana, one of the progressive states in India, and one of the leading aerospace hubs. In fact, recently we won the Best State Award from the Ministry of Civil Aviation for the aerospace sector. So I would like to kind of pick up from where Mr. Mulkani had kind of shared the kind of figures what the central government is kind of, particularly for the MRO sector, how the central and state governments are now kind of gearing up for making India an MRO hub. It's been a lot of announcements, particularly in this current year, has come up in terms of from the finance minister as well as from the defense sector and the Minister of Civil Aviation in terms of the key structural enablers what need to be built in to make MRO business attractive for India. And a couple of that's already been highlighted is the announcement that GST, which has been a major pain point in terms of MRO, has been slashed from 18% to 5%, which is, when you look at it, it's kind of globally competitive because other major hubs are having, 7% and above when it comes to the GST rate. Corporate tax rate has been reduced for new manufacturing companies from 25% to 15%. So, in a global perspective, this has become India much more competitive in terms of setting up new ventures. Ministry of Defense and Ministry of Civil Aviation are now working together, estimating the combined MRO requirements and building on synergies. And I believe this exercise will also build a much more investable case for having a more stronger MRO infrastructure created in the country. And the government is also considering sharing offset benefits, so where to kind of plug these things together, which will encourage a lot of foreign OEMs an attractive proposition to kind of be a co-investor or be a partner in the MRO initiative being planned in India. Besides, the UDAN scheme is also taking off. In fact, we recently had concluded a helicopter summit. So in multimodal transport in terms of both the fixed things as well as the helicopter side of things, a lot more is coming up in terms of new airports are being built up. And post-COVID, in fact, COVID has been a dampener for all, but I don't think that is a milestone or yardstick that we need to use. What I would like to do is I like to kind of take a pre-COVID scenario going to kind of come back in a couple of quarters, and the growth in India will continue. So that's again going to be a major reason why MRO needs to come to India. And there are several potential MRO hubs, not just Hyderabad, Delhi, Bombay, Hyderabad, Bangalore, Dholera, Nagpur. All these major aviation hubs are kind of planning or gearing towards serving the MRO sector, creating the right infrastructure there, and looking forward for the investments to land in there. And from a state government perspective, I would probably say that the government of Telangana has been very progressive in terms, or rather, we are very focused in getting the investments in aerospace and defense sector. We've been the largest defense hub and lately known or rather preferred by a lot of global OEMs to set up their manufacturing centers here. And I see there's a lot of synergy between manufacturing centers of OEMs when compared to the MRO services being attached to it. From a policy perspective, we have a policy for giving customized incentive for mega projects. So, anything which a company would want to, or rather investor would want to discuss, the government is willing to kind of look at it and provide the necessary support in terms of the customized incentives, exemptions, capex subsidies, etc. Infrastructure-wise, we have one of the best rated airports in the country, and the airport infrastructure which we have has got ample hangars, parking space in particular, because night parking facilities available in GMR Airport, and that's something which probably can be a value add when it comes to considering an airport, MRO location. We have two MROs, GMR Aerotechnic and Air India Engineering Service in Hyderabad, and we are also in discussion with a couple of engine MRO engine OEMs rather, to set up their engine MRO operations. Yeah. As I said, there's a strong linkage with OEM manufacturing, and Hyderabad lately has been known as we've been able to kind of attract a lot of investment from global OEMs like Lockheed Martin, Boeing, GE, Safran, Pratt & Whitney is having their engine training center there. CSM is having their engine training center there. Saab is having a design center here. So a lot of these OEMs are already present in Hyderabad. In fact, for that matter, every other location there will be key anchors who probably bring in the necessary case to kind of have the OEMs here. One key aspect which was mentioned was the skilling support. In fact, we had recognized that way in advance. In fact, we have partnerships with multiple global skilling centers. Like there's a French-based French MRO training center called Aero Campus Aquitaine, with whom we are kind of having a MOU to kind of set up an MRO training center in Hyderabad. Similarly, Cranfield University has signed up with us, and Cranfield has started offering courses in Hyderabad for specialized aviation skilling programs. We also have an MOU with Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, US, for again specialized skilling programs in the sector. So our focus right now is mostly investment-linked skilling. So wherever there's a requirement, we have the kind of tie-ups as well as the framework for providing skill support. And many times the government subsidizes a skilling program or also gets the skilling done at our expense for the new investment. The other area which we focus on is on innovation. So we have the state-promoted incubator called T-Hub, which has kind of hosted the Boeing Horizon X program and Boeing Growth program recently. We also did an accelerator program from Pratt & Whitney. Recently tied up with Airbus BizLab for doing a couple of their case studies in Hyderabad. So both in terms of infrastructure again, we have got 5 aerospace parks where 2 aerospace SEZ, one by the state government and one by GMR, and a couple of other aerospace parks. We've got the largest electronic manufacturing hub, the ECTs in the country, so 900 acres. A lot of aerospace avionics work is now kind of getting done. So a large number of aerospace related firms. We've got 1,000 MSMEs currently supporting the supply chain. All these builds up a case for any OEM or investor who would like to have an MRO built in. The state government, like ours, are willing to support as well as they are keen to support, and look forward to hear from the audience as well as from the respective speakers more in terms of how we can join the journey towards making India an MRO hub. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Praveen, and very interesting again. Again, Hyderabad is something that keeps coming up in my sort of realm in looking at India as well. So no doubt, not surprised actually in terms of the defence there in the MRO sector. We are going to hand over, I think, to get some background more from the Coast Guard and naval perspectives from Rear Admiral Devendra Sadan. And then we'll hear from, in terms of the Air Force perspective, from Air Vice Marshal Avinder. Devendra Sadan, maybe give some perspectives from the MRO sector for you.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Raman. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes, all good. We can see you.
Lovely. Greetings to all my co-panelists and all the individuals who are watching this webinar. I'll be giving you a naval and a Coast Guard perspective on MRO. And I think before I do that, it's important to understand how large this naval market or maritime market. And while people associate, Navy with ships and imagine a small aviation component, the fact of the matter is the Indian Navy is a pretty large service, and the naval aviation on the air arm is substantial and expanding. As of now, at present, we have almost about 230 plus aircrafts, and with the plans to double the size almost to almost 400 plus within a decade. 10 to 15 years. And of course, we operate a range of aircrafts, from legacy aircrafts like, let's say, the Chetak helicopter, that's the Alouette, to the latest generation P-8I, which we acquired about 8 years back. So therefore, we have a pretty large air arm, and from old aircrafts, new aircraft, and that brings up its own challenges. In fact, we have almost 12 different types of aircraft. Quite like all the other armed forces, our mix is also, the mix of aircraft is also fairly large in the sense that we do have aircraft which are indigenous platforms built within the country, such as the Dornier aircraft, the Chetak, and the Advanced Light Helicopter. Then we have aircraft which are from the Western European countries, America, such as the P8I, which I mentioned, the Sea King helicopter from UK, the Hawk trainer, and of course, we've just signed, India just signed a contract for 24 MH-60 Romeo helicopters. And as far as UAVs are concerned, we have the Heron and the Searcher. And the third stream that we have in the Navy are the Russian stream of aircrafts. The MiG-29K, the fighter on our aircraft carrier, is a classic example. The maritime reconnaissance aircraft, the IL-38, is another. Helicopters such as the Kamov-28 AHW helicopter and the Kamov-31, which is a AEW helicopter, come to mind. And therefore, there are challenges in terms of maintaining, these platforms serviceable, because they come from three different segments, sections of operation. When you come to the Coast Guard, which is a sister service, they have about 62 aircraft at present, and they have plans also to increase it to about 100 100 aircraft in the next 4 to 5 years. And when you see the market, the maritime market of aircrafts, then you have presently almost about 300 aircraft going up to 550 plus. And that then leads to the fact that there is a pretty substantial air element which is there with the Indian Navy and the Coast Guard. And when you have a large segment, you also have a concurrent requirement of MRO, which therefore also has a pretty substantial capability, which is required and needs to be built up. As of now, as Mr. Malkani was mentioning, the DPSU, that's a Defense Public Sector Undertaking, the Hindustan Aeronautical Limited (HAL), is a flag bearer in maintenance for defense and military aircraft. Largely, most of the MRO activity within the country is being carried out by HAL. Alternately, it is being done by the services themselves. But it is currently overloaded with work, and therefore, when you combine it with the kind of further capability which is required in the defense MRO market segment, which as again what Mr. Malkani said, that the capacity of defense MRO is so large that it is embarrassing. You find that there is no option but for the private sector to get involved and for MRO capability to be enhanced in the private sector. This is also seen in the various policies and provisions which the government is coming out with. If you see the latest defense procurement procedure, the BPP, you find that they have allowed for this. And in fact, in the offset policy, they have offsets allowed to be taken for the MRO sector by the OEM itself. So therefore, India is poised to become a pretty large defense aircraft market. And as military expenditure increases, the necessity for military MRO capabilities will increase. It is already very large, but as you look at the future projections, the MRO capacity and capability in country has to go up. There's no doubt in that. But coming back to the Navy, let me just explain to all what is the system that we have. MRO in military aviation has been an integral part of our force structure. And it is largely carried out in the Indian Air Force with the BRDs, that's the base repair depots, and in the Navy through something called the Naval Aircraft Yards. And these aircraft yards have a deep maintenance facility for MRO, and they have a large vendor base through which they work together and maintain aircraft. All iron bases have deep level workshops to repair component level work at these bases as and when required. We have the Indian Navy has two naval aircraft yards. One is at Goa, which is a fourth line aviation industrial establishment and supports the Eastern region aircrafts. I spoke about the MiG-29K, I spoke about the Kamov helicopters. So all these Eastern region aircrafts are maintained there. And they carry out all the MRO activities with respect to aircrafts, engine, system, components of the Eastern region aircrafts. And they do have hangars, avionic workshops, engineering workshops, and so on and so forth. at the second naval aircraft yard, which is at Cochin, which is in South India, this supports the Western aircraft. Western aircrafts like the Hawk, for example, or the Sea King. And earlier we used to have the Harrier, so it used to look after that. And that also has a large amount of workshops. In fact, it had an engine repair center where instead of sending the engines abroad, we had got the capability in the aircraft yard itself to carry out the overhaul and repair of engines there itself. So they are pretty capable. And this is where the private sector has to get associated with, to learn as to cooperate and to collaborate with the Indian Navy in terms of working out what are the future requirements that are going to arise with respect to the current fleet of aircraft as to the ones that are going to be inducted. The Navy, Indian Navy, has been a big proponent of indigenization. You've seen that in our ships, where most of our ships today are built in country. And in naval aviation also, the plan has been the same. And we have come out with a document which is called the Naval Aviation Indigenization Roadmap 2019-2022, which is almost a 160-page document and includes spares and parts for its aviation sets, which include both the MiG-29K aircraft and the P-8I MR aircraft and all the other aircraft. So what do you want to indigenize? Now, why I'm bringing this up is because it highlights the attitude and approach of the service to make sure that the capability that is required is present within the country itself, rather than wasting time sending components and spares abroad or carrying out maintenance, outside anywhere else. And along with that, we have also come out with a naval aviation indigenization guidebook, which guides the industry as to what is the manner in which the process is to be carried out, so that there's clarity. While the old timer will know what the process is, but for a new entrant, and as the MRO market starts to expand and there's new companies come in, they get a bit confused. So therefore, there's a primer, in fact, a naval aviation indigenization guidebook, which has also been released, which sort of handholds them. What is expected is that the release of this plan would further synergize Indian Navy's relationship with the industry and encourage all sectors of industry to come forward and participate in indigenous development of weapon sensors and other high-end equipment. As far as the government is concerned, the Ministry of Defence itself in India has laid out in the open domain expansive plan for modernization of aircrafts and equipment through something which is called the Long-Term Integrated Perspective Plan, the Technology Perspective and Capability Roadmap, TPCR, and of course the Services Capital Acquisition Plan. So therefore, any company that is looking to get into the defense sector and is wanting to find out as to which is the area which is going to be opened up, there are a large amount of documents in the open domain which bring out, indicate as to where the business lies. Coming to MRO itself, as is the norm, there are, you can divide it into two places. One is at the micro level, where the aim is to achieve obsolescence management or import substitution to avoid OEM dependency. And in these cases, the approach is more platform centric. And let me give a couple of examples on that. So that, when you replace tires or batteries or brake units or multifunctional displays, a small component in the aircraft. So that is one kind of work that goes on. And let me quote an example here. We had the P-8I which got inducted, I told you about 8 years back. And the tires were, for example, were coming from abroad. They had a certain life. But what we were finding was that in India, as the numerous landings were going on, their life, they were wearing away very fast, and that required us to forever go back, chase, demand tires, which are causing a large amount of problems because it takes time and it's very costly. And one of the earliest things that we got indigenized and certified in India was the P-8I tires. An Indian company its product was selected, it was certified, and now we have aircraft flying with Indian tires. I mean, there's so many more examples. The point I'm just highlighting is that is the kind of activity Indian Navy is forever reaching out to the private sector to encourage it to come forward to participate in our aircraft maintenance. And of course, there's a larger long-term, as far as MRO is concerned, the macro view in terms of long-term sustenance, enhanced capabilities of new generation aircraft like the MiG-29K, P-8I, Hawk, Kamav 31, and so on and so forth. A bit more on that as we go along. And in fact, even for training, we have got back to the private industry for helping us out. And again, another, let me quote example for to be understood by all. When we got the P8I, to train our engine people on the aircraft, but every year there are a number of people coming in, having their training support, and it was a fair amount of effort. We looked around and we found that within the country itself, there was capability. So we tied up with CFN International at Hyderabad to provide on-the-job training to the Indian Navy workforce, engineers and technicians for the engine at their newly opened Hyderabad center. And therefore, now what you have is you have the new people who are coming out of training into the stream, PRI stream, the engine people. They are sent to CFN International. They run a course for them. They teach them what is the correct method. They teach them what are the standards to maintain, and they come and join. And therefore, if you look at our PRI stream, you find that the serviceability is very high. And the point I'm making from here is that you see how much we've associated with the private sector to gain from the experience, to collaborate with them, to make sure that it happens right. And just remember that I'm just giving a couple of examples. One can just sort of go on listing on more and more and more. Coming to other maintenance MRO activities. When you have foreign aircrafts and you come into deep repair, the dilemma always exists that do you do it within the country or do you send it abroad? For example, the Russian aircraft go abroad for repair, for maintenance and deep, for the long-term maintenance. While for the Western aircraft, what we did, what I'm talking about years back, for the Sea Kings, they also, when they used to come to the long, deep maintenance, we said, it doesn't make sense to go send it back and spend some of the time. Let us look within. And therefore, at NAY Kochi, which is our Western region aircraft yard, we tied up with the HAL. HAL MRO do what is called 90-weekly inspection. And we found that the standards there were brilliant in terms of time-wise, in terms of quality of work that we had, we achieved. And therefore, that is what we've been doing there. Even now, there's something called expendable aerial target, which is available in numbers as targets for practice firing. And here again, we've tied up with Indian Navy has tied up with Mrs. Anadrone Systems Private Limited in Mumbai for comprehensive maintenance and training. And data pattern has been associated for the AMC, that the annual maintenance contract of the Sea King automatic test equipment at Kochi, Mumbai. Such kind of activity will also be required for the aircraft that come new. We have the MiG-29K, which joined us almost about 10 years back, and they'll be falling due for deep repair, the maintenance part of it. There's opportunity here. Would somebody like to tie up with the MiG group and Indian MRO and work with them to get it done within the country itself? So there is great opportunity as far as MRO is concerned. Upgrade is another area which has great potential to be at the forefront of operational excellence. The services need to retain an edge by undertaking rapid upgrades of avionic and weapon systems. And the MRO should be able to provide this. We have all services over a period of time carry out various upgrade programs on naval aircraft systems. And let me give you a few examples here of IFF, ESM system, the communication system, SATCOM, network-centric capability, so on and so forth. One big program that the Indian Navy had carried out was something called the LUSH program, the Limited Upgrade of the Sea Harrier. They started in 2005. The Sea Harrier was a British aircraft. The equipment that he wanted fitted was from Israel, new radar and missiles, and therefore, how to coordinate it all? Where do we send the aircraft? How do we do it? We decided we'll do it in country. We tied up with both the OEMs. we got our people together. In this case, in the year 2005, there were not very many MRO that qualified, and they were tied up with HAL, and they came across to our air station at Goa, and this program was undertaken. It took about 5 years, but the end result was a very, very capable aircraft that we had in terms of upgradation, in terms of operational capability. As of now, for the present, for the Kamov 28 helicopters, which is the ASW helicopter from Russia on our Russian ships, it has been is undergoing overall at present, and then it's also going to be upgraded with newer sensors, which is going to be carried out in India. So such kind of activities across the fleet of aircrafts keeps on arising at very regular intervals, and there's great opportunity for the private sector to get in and participate. Life enhancement program.
Beg your pardon, Rear Admiral, just in the interest of time, and thank you very much for that overview. We could go on. In fact, I've got a number of questions that have been raised during that particular session. I think you've really covered off some of the key aspects there as well in terms of training and even the upgrades and bringing all that in country. We're just going to give just in the interest of time, just give Air Vice Marshal Arvinder an opportunity, just give the Air Force view, and then we'll try and touch on some of these questions because in a way you're somewhat answering them as you go through. People are asking questions and you're touching them. So Air Vice Marshal, if we could just get your sort of insights into the MRO industry, and thank you very much for that, Rear Admiral Sudan, and really good in terms of the numbers as well, in terms of aircraft, which is critical.
Thank you, Chris. Good afternoon, everybody. Sorry, Admiral Sudan, to cut this short. Coming in last in a webinar, a lot of data that I wanted to talk about has already been presented, so I'll try to avoid that. Let me start with the approach of Air. Right from its inception in 1932, Indian Air Force opted for a in-house MRO setup. There were many reasons. Basically, the national policy of not involving private sector in defense. I will qualify by saying not involving Indian private sector, because most of the OEMs were private sector in any case. Far-off locations of OEM, and at that time, problems of transportation leading to long turnaround time forced Indian Air Force to set up its own MRO system. Of course, a felt need for self-reliance and very limited infrastructure in the country. In aviation industry, the MRO is generally called O level, I level, D level. Indian Air Force has another level called third level. In old times, third level was structural repair by specialist units like called repair and salvage unit, which went to the bases and provided specialist repair. But over time, the third level has come to mean setting up of service support centers for limited repair of avionics. I am mentioning this because I feel this is the area where the private sector has maximum scope of getting in. What is the effectiveness of present Air Force system of MRO? Operational availability of aircraft is a good gauge for the effectiveness of MRO. Today, Indian Air Force has an operational availability between 55 to 60%. This is way below the expected level of 75 to 80% aircraft online. The major reason for this is very high percentage of AOC, meaning non-availability of spare parts when required. Of course, for Indian Air Force, a contributory factor is the diversity of its fleet. As on date, Air Force operates 7 types of fighters, 6 types of transport aircraft, 7 types of helicopters, and a large number of types of trainer aircraft. This makes space management virtually a nightmare. Of course, movement of skilled manpower from the base repair depot due to operational reasons is another reason for depletion of skill in the repair depot. Indian Air Force also has a very aging fleet. Normally, any air force should have 40% of its aircraft below 10 years of age, 30% between 10 and 20 years, and 30% above 20 years. Unfortunately, Indian Air Force has more than 50% of its fleet which is aging more than 20 years. Last but not the least is the Indian bureaucratic procedures, which are shortage to stay the lead. It takes almost 2 years for replacement parts to be obtained under normal circumstances. Even AOG spare parts would take 6 to 12 months. I would also like to say a few words about the importance of this. I feel that in the Ministry of Defense here, due importance is not given to MRO during the planning. If you look at the life cycle cost of an aircraft, design and development is about 15%, production about 35%, operations and maintenance constitute 50% of the life cycle cost. In spite of that, we pay very little attention to the MRO when planning. Global spend on MRO in 2017 was roughly $114 billion, and 45% of this was defense MRO. This is how much the MRO expenses. Look at it against the total production of aircraft worldwide, which in 2017 was just 103 billion, much below MRO cost. As per the latest estimate, Indian Air Force would spend roughly $150 billion in next 15 years for procurement of aircraft. A minimum of 15% of this would be the MRO cost, which translates roughly to $1.5 billion a year. As on date, the total stores budget under revenue head for Indian Air Force is much below this figure. Whereas we need $1.5 billion just for aircraft maintenance, total stores budget is not enough. So I'm again trying to cut short. The role of the organizations in India, there are 3 major players: Indian Air Force, HAL, and private industry. The role of Indian Air Force is or should be merely defense of the skies of this nation against aggression by enemy. It has got into MRO business just for lack of any alternative. The envisaged role for Hindustan Aeronautics Limited is to design, develop, and manufacture military aircraft. To my knowledge, the last aircraft designed and developed by HAL was HF-24, which was almost 50 years ago. HAL has got into everything except their basic. To some extent, one can understand MRO setup by HAL for aircraft manufactured. but I can at least find no rationale for HAL setting up MRO facilities for, let's say, Mirage 2000 or for RE-33 Aero engine. Why? At present, the role of private sector in military MRO is almost negligible, in spite of what my friend Bharat mentioned. I would like to say, as of 1st January this year, only total of 59 private companies are registered with DGAC. And out of these 59, barely 18 are for MRO activities. And this 18 includes 5 companies which are registered for MRO of ground support equipment and test equipment, leaving 13 for airborne system MRO. If you look at the other countries, let me give an example of Europe. It became operational somewhere in 2002, 2004. In 2002 itself, most of the countries operating this aircraft signed long-term maintenance contracts with private industry. They call it a cooperative model. Air forces and private industry cooperating with each other. Airframe, engines, weapon systems, everything is maintained under this cooperative model between air forces and private industry. Only for some of the component repairs, they entrusted to OEMs, and some air forces have a limited repair facility for themselves for their field. Now let us look at some of the options available. I feel in the long run, IAF and HAL should get out of MRO and concentrate on their core role. Of course, if HAL wants, it can still continue with MRO of the aircraft manufacturer. But Indian Air Force has a huge infrastructure of MRO built over so many decades. What are the options with Indian Air Force? They can continue as their own MRO agency, outsource totally to private industry, or follow a what we can call a PPP model, public-private partnership. We have seen that by handling own MRO, IAF is not able to optimally use its resources, at the same time not being able to provide operational availability of its aircraft. Outsourcing totally to industry may look good. Has the obvious advantage of Air Force not having to spend on infrastructure and improved efficiency maybe. However, it has the problem of lack of control by Air Force, loss of know-how, and the doubt about availability of some of the private players involved. Also, the question is what to do with the existing infrastructure of Indian Air Force. So probably a PPP model can take care of this by moving from joint ownership of infrastructure and participation of both Air Force and industry manpower in MRO. IAF can perhaps look after the quality assurance while the vendors can provide spare or manpower. I'm only speculating. At least I am not aware of any initiative taken by the Indian Air Force in this direction. Yes, a few years ago, they issued an RFP for providing a long-term support contract for IL-76 aircraft with an assured availability of something, and the contractor was to look after second line, third line, fourth line, and all. But that RFP was issued from 8 or 9 years ago. I don't think anything has happened further. Looking at the present scenario, IAF can perhaps move in steps till it develops its confidence in the private industry. It could start by offloading assured spare supply to the vendor under some kind of a contract, then move on to repair services, and finally to full system capability. I would like to wind up with a few recommendations. The traditional approach for Indian airports has become unaffordable. Therefore, IAF and industry should be in this together. We should move from provide and forget to whole life support system. Develop a defense industry strategy. At least for MRO, even our DPP 2020 talks very little. Adopt a PPP model where each entity can focus on its task and core competence. Of course, this, like everything else, has a flip side. It would take time for mental adjustments and confidences to build up. Let me end this with a word of caution for my industry friends. Aviation MRO is an expensive and time-consuming exercise. Unlike normal business, even break-even point would take a few years. Therefore, MRO contracts need to be long-term, and my industry friends need to be little patient for their earnings. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Vice Marshal Arvinder, and very good points to make as well. I am interested in have interest in time, as we do have an award ceremony to do. There are numerous questions here, and I think almost too many. One of the issues that was raised was the design of contracts, particularly Russian contracts with potential loopholes. Others look at the contrast between the private and civil sector, so the defence and civil sector as well. And I think we'll take them offline, but looks like some good opportunities there for Max Aerospace Group, if ever I've seen some, for sure. So on that note, I think we would like to thank our panel formally. And I omitted to read the introductions at the start, just with the slides as they came in. And if any of the audience do have questions coming in fact, there's one here from Shield, perhaps ADCI AI can take inputs from IAF and MRO companies to come up with recommendations and approach for stage-wide evolution of PPP, the public-private partnership models for long-term MROU plans. And it sounds like that's some key recommendations for you there, Raman. So we did briefly see Commissioner Gupta there, and I do hope, if he hasn't left just yet, I can at least thank him formally for appearing with us. And Mr. Vinay Gupta has been working with the High Commission of Canada in New Delhi as Trade Commissioner for the last 30 years, so extremely esteemed, no doubt. And his current portfolio includes aerospace and defence. Previously, he handled the diverse sectors: infrastructure, environmental technologies, manufacturing technologies, and life sciences. His role primarily relates to assisting Canadian firms to do business in India by way of providing market information, finding Indian partners, and technology transfer. He's also involved in assisting Indian firms for setting up operations in Canada. His educational qualifications include business and marketing management. So for the audience with interests or links to Canada, you are well served to reach out to Mr. Vinay Gupta. And Mr. Vinay Gupta, if you're still with us, thank you very much for joining us today. I'm not too sure if he's there. I can see him on, but he's not on camera or on mic. And also would like to also thank, here we go. I've got a whole bunch of stuff on my screen here. Davinder Sudan, the former naval aviator with his 30+ years also in the Navy, and retired in 2019 at the rank of Rear Admiral. Thank you very much for that, Rear Admiral Sedan. Thank you very much for your I can see you're upside down in front of me, unfortunately, but on my other screen, you're the right way up. So thank you very much. And it was a very interesting presentation. And Mr. Praveen, I do also have your bio up. And again, I'm going to highlight you've received the Best State Awards in 2018 and 2020 from the Ministry of Civil Aviation for the state, the most progressive outlook for the aviation and aerospace sector. And you're in the alumni of the IIM Ahmedabad and I've got to need my glasses for these ones. Shavaningan Gurukul Fellow from the Department of Politics and International Relations of Oxford University. So I won't read your full bio out, but you're the Director of Aerospace and Defence with the initiatives for the government of Telangana. So thank you very much for joining us. If anyone else needs to reach out to Mr. Praveen, please go in via Raman. ABM Arvinda and Mr. Bharat Malkani, this is your second appearance with us during this series. You're both very esteemed, and thank you very much for your contributions also, as always. And Mr. Sapori, over to you in terms of how you would like to do it next. You want to sit on the phone. Over to you. Do you want me to bring up your slides now, Raman?
Yes.
Okay, here we go. One moment. I'm just going to take mine off for a second. There you go, Raman. It's your slides are up, and just let me know when you want to go through these.
Yeah. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, panelists, and thank you, audience. Before I take 5 minutes to introduce the concept of the new economic policy and challenges for us, based on the interaction which we had, can you hear me clearly?
Yes, all good.
Yeah.
Okay. I have picked up 10 points on the discussion and presentation. Number one from Mr. Vinay Gupta's thing, Canada has the ability to work with India on the simulators. And when we talk of MRO, we do need the maintenance simulators. Bharat Malkani can pick up some clue from there. Secondly, when it came to Admiral Sudan's size of the business, we have to also share with the audience that Navy is going for 100 plus naval utility helicopters. They'll add to the MRO business size itself. When it came to ABM Arvind Agarwal's slides, Air Force is also going for the new range of light combat aircraft, including the 100 plus fighter aircraft, which are going to add to the business size. And also, for the sake of audience, Indian government is now inviting suggestions for the new defense acquisition policy. And 2 days back, Indian government has issued a list of 101 banned items. That means you can't import them. And once you scroll through the list, you realize that there are a lot of opportunities for the MRO sector itself. Last week, we discussed on the 3D printing parts. We are going to suggest to the government reduce the the GST from 18% to 5%, so that the parts which the Indian vendors are making in the 3D printing could be absorbed itself. So there's a lot of support from the 3D printing industry itself. One critical point from my own experience in the Indian Air Force is, when it comes to the obsolescence management, while the platform is there with us for 20, 25, and 30 years, who is going to take care of the obsolescence of the aviation software? We do the upgrades, but software somebody take charge. This is a big challenge in the MRO industry. So software itself in the MRO offers a lot of scope for this thing, including the testing of the software itself, which goes in the aircraft, both for civil and military itself. And of course, as Mr. Praveen has told, he is not in the defense corridors or neither in the north and the south, but there will be other state governments who will be challenging and in the forthcoming Aero India, event, which is scheduled in Bangalore in the first week of February 2021. What I'm proposing to Chris, that let's work out a proper format of discussing some of the issues during the Aero India show. Now, with that, I would like to run through the slides. So what we are trying to say is that we do need skills in the industry to survive and to support. And in the next 2-3 slides, yes, this is the layered architecture of aerospace defense sector in India. Details I will not share, but that is given in the LinkedIn of my page. What we are trying to say is that this is the structure of the layered architecture. Defense news in USA has got the top 100 listed companies all over the world. Only 2 Indian companies, that is Hindustan Aeronautics and Bharat Electronics, get listed there. But my own perception of my team research is in the next 5 years, some more private sector will get listed here. We have no Indian company either in the OEM or in the tier 1. And then we have the supply chain of global. Some Indian companies are appearing in the whole. And we have the government layer, which consisting of the defense research organizations, the ordnance factories, and of course the defense public sector as well as central public. What we have is the strategic partnership layer, where the 4 areas of the acquisition are reserved for the nomination basis for the fighter aircraft, for the helicopters, for the ships and submarines, and for the various armored vehicles itself. Then what we call is at the Bombay Club companies. These are the companies which are in the Tatas, L&Ts, and other such 10 companies. I am going to cover the next 3 layers: national SME, small, medium, regional SME, and the MSME. Our association focuses on this sector because if we have to have innovation, if we have to create jobs, this is the layered architecture which supports all the R&D innovation takes place. Total about 8,000 companies are registered in these layers, and the global awards which we have got is on the entire ecosystem of this layer. Then we have the global consultants, the media layer, and Chamber of Commerce. Next slide, please. Go back to the logo, please. Backward. Yeah, for the sake of those who do not know what this association does, we have got a 3-layered architecture. What we see are the 5 keys. These are the 5 mantras or 5 solutions to make the business grow. This also shows that out of 5 continents, our association is present in 4 continents itself. The inner core team, which in the red circle, is consisting of the top 100 people selected out of the 1,000 people all over the world. And some of the panelists are already there in that 100 core team. The middle layer of the association consisting of 4,500, actually it is now touching 5,000, and the outer layer is consisting of about 15,000 people networked all over the world. We have very strict criteria, and our association back office is monitoring 430 websites all over the world, getting feeds from social medias, and keeping this track of what is happening in the aerospace defense. Next slide, please. So all that has been covered. So what we do is we have an engagement model of working with the government, working with the private sector. The point which I'm highlighting is, with the new technologies coming very fast, 10% of the firms in India are reporting losses and going to NCLT. That means merger acquisition in the aerospace defense sector has become a reality. It is happening. We are getting a lot of frantic calls from companies who want to close their family business because the next generation is not interested. At the same time, we are getting frantic calls from new investors who know nothing about defense, but they have the cash, they want to invest. So there's a question of how do we marry the two. So that is what we are doing. And we also take selective investments also. We have very strict order of accepting the issues. So we define the problem, we understand what is the area of darkness, reducing the total cost of operation of the company. We also have very strict legal and financial management and the quality improvement. We also have a practice called auto to aerospace. What happened in Detroit, we are trying to repeat that. This problem we came across during the COVID time when the auto sector went into heavy loss. So we have been selecting some model companies in different clusters of India and converting the auto ancillary units to the aerospace itself, because that was not done. Next slide, please. So how does the association work? We understand the sign off between the companies. What do they want? What is the risk they've got? What is the pain area? No two companies are same. So we identify what is the key issue at stake. What is the problem area? So last sentence is that ADCI is like a super specialty hospital where experts are available to offer solution to all issues and pain areas. Thank you very much for the team who has been working with us. We've been having this webinar itself. So we don't depend on God and government to solve the problem. We always see the glass half full, not half empty. And we can assure the audience and the people who are there, we are currently working on a couple of companies in the steel sector to help them in pushing for the investment, for the business enterprise, even reskilling the education sector for IoT, cybersecurity, and also for the electronic facility. If any one of you in the audience has got a requirement of funds, on of course select basis, we go to the deliberation and then sign off and arrange funds also. These are not funds from the Indian banks, that is very expensive. These are the funds which are certified, and we do a deliberation. Next slide, please. This is a repeat of what I've told. The first box says category of customer, ease of doing business, what is the decision-making ability of the management, what is the risk we are taking, what is the current satisfaction, customer satisfaction score, and what is the defense brand equity, what is the figure of merit. Figure of merit means the defense brand equity divided by the overall general brand of the company, and what are the core technology areas of the company they are working on. Based on these criteria, we have a mathematical model to analyze each of the parameters, work out the pain areas required, what is the duration of engagement, what is the geography in India and the other parts of the globe. We are very strict in ethics, strict in legal and financial arrangements, and then we engage with domain experts, and we also evaluate our domain experts in a 360-degree feedback. Next slide, please. This was the kickoff webinar which we did in Delhi. We were supposed to have the webinar, in fact, a seminar physically in Delhi in the award ceremony. Unfortunately, due to COVID, we are not doing it. What you have in the center is a advisor from the World Bank on our panel, and he is also getting one of the awards. Some of you are there in the panel itself. We do have such a training going on for our corporate members. Those who want to join us, share the knowledge, always most welcome. Next slide, please. Chris?
Apologies, Raman, I was on mute. The next slide is your thank you slide, and then I've got the actually awardees. What did you want to do next? Did you hear me? Sorry, Raman, did you hear me then?
Say again.
The next slide is your thank you slide. You wanted the lists up of the fellowships?
Yes, please.
Okay, just one moment. I'm just going to swap over.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, today is the 8th week of our webinar series. We had formed a international assessment team. Also, the previous distinguished fellows were part of the team. Our criteria was that anybody whose name has come It is from a list of 1,000+ people who came to us from different parts. Also, some of the members of the association itself. So we will be sending the certificates and the gift packs to each one, physically as well as by soft copies also. I'm just reading out quick names of the distinguished fellows. Mr. Kanwal Monga, President, Virgo Corporation, responsible for cooperation between India and Japan. Dr. J.P. Dudeja, he is an international scientist in the laser physics, electro-optics. Mr. Chris Kabaj, congratulations. You have been
Thank you very much.
unanimously for bringing India and Australia together. Wing Commander Pradeep Valsankar from the World Bank, advisor to us also. Mr. Amber Dubey, Joint Secretary in the Ministry of Civil Aviation. He is ex-KPMG audience itself. Can you scroll up, please?
Next one.
Yeah, no, the same slide. Just go down. I want to see.
Beg your pardon. I can't. No, I can't scroll it down. I'm sorry.
Is Mr. Adesh Jain for international experience in the project management studies. Mr. Bharat Malkani, congratulations, you are there for contributing in the MRO sector and also the president of MRO Association of India. Mr. Anup Bose is a Supreme Court lawyer, also advisor to us on legal justice affairs. Mr. Ajay Jain brings pioneering work in the applied electronics research. Mr. Posina Rao, he is no introduction required, for bringing India and France together. Mr. Vinay Gupta for international cooperation in the India and Canadian affairs. Air Vice Marshal Arvind Agarwal, sir, congratulations. We are honored to have you here on the panel for military affairs. Mr. Ashok Atturi is a person who has brought the simulator business to India. And incidentally, that business is now in the banned list. So he's going to make a lot of money. Scroll up, please. The fellows, Miss Tekel Harry is from USA in the field of electronic components. She is working very closely with our association itself. Veena Bopana is currently based in Austria. She brings to India an experience of setting up electronic PCB industries. Incidentally, she already has the orders from Indian MRO industry, even though the plant is yet to be operational. Dr. Kiran Kumar is a professor in the field of computer science and information systems. Our association is providing support to their students in the field of PhD studies. Commodore Naresh Kumar from IIT Jammu in the field of support to the MSME sector itself. AVM AK Nab for the support of EW and US technologies. Mr. Anil Yadav in the field of Homeland Security Technology and GI studies. Commodore Anil J. Singh in the field of underwater technologies and maritime threat perceptions. Brigadier Ashish Bhattacharya is to provide the association between India and foreign countries and specifically in the USA in particular. Colonel Inderjeet Singh in the field of cyber warfare studies. Rajiv Prakash Saxena for the field of cyber security and response system. Mr. Jacob Klein is based in Tel Aviv, who brings to the India the focus of India-Israel MSME sector cooperation. Mr. Anil Kaul is a captain from the Air India, also brings a lot of brand awareness to us in the sector itself. Mr. Parveen, congratulations to you for contribution in the creating world-class infra in your state of Telangana and being the voice of the government sector itself. Dr. Lakshman Kumar Bera for contribution in the field of procurement policy framework in the offset studies itself. Next, please. Dr. Chinmay Hegde and Sangeeta Garg from the field of smart city projects. Incidentally, our association is working with them to come out with the usage of COVID control solution in the smart city. They'll be coming online next week. Air Commodore Goyal in the field of research in the drone studies. Colonel A.K. Singh is from SATCOM Technologies and bringing Indo-Sweden collaboration. Dr. Shibu John in the field of 3D printing. He was online last week. Then on the senior membership, two of our star speakers, Mr. Himanshu Dave is based in Ahmedabad. He's a startup company doing amazing work in the field of radar and EW systems. Vishal Mehta is a brand manager for us in the International Cooperation Media Manager itself. We have a special award this year for the COVID. Mr. Suresh Mutneja is based out of Mumbai. He is actually getting into the defense sector last 6 months. We were assisting him, but he did the very proactive, job of creating a healthcare company. And today his items are being sold on the Amazon, and he is coming out with a healthcare itself as a separate business unit. So there is an advantage of using the difficulty into advantage itself. And in fact, his items are sold like hotcakes in all the malls. All round best, Mr. Pankaj Bhai. He is based in Delhi, and we have a just go up this startup award.
Oh, I beg your pardon, you can't see.
Doesn't matter. So we have a startup award, and also we have nominated a Student of the Year award. So this list would be there on the website of Mr. Chris, and also the certificates would be reaching the panelists and awardees on the 15th of August. With this, we close, and thank you very much. Over to Chris.
Thank you very much, Raman.
Yeah, Siri, what's on the startup? Yeah, thank you. Over to Chris.
Yeah, so Mr. Srivatsan there with the Startup Award. So look, thank you so much for today. In terms of closing off, as I mentioned, beg your pardon, we are going to continue our particular series with the Indo-Pacific series, still covering off on aerospace, defence and security technology, market trends, but again, just a bit more branding, and we'll also bring in a little bit more of the US, and I think just the Quad opportunities between the US, India, Australia and Japan as the Indo-Pacific starts to become a very interesting series. So next week, same time, next Tuesday, we will be talking about smart cities and the smart places strategy here in Australia, and we'll compare that to India. The following week, beg your pardon, the following week we'll look at cybersecurity, and we'll continue off on these domains of aerospace and space, defence and national security, cybersecurity and critical technology, and cities and infrastructure. So hopefully you can join with us, and the registration details will remain the same, just a slight change. As per normal, these sessions are available on MySecurity TV. The YouTube recording and video will be available to you as of tomorrow afternoon, and it will come out about this time to you by email with a link. So on that note, thank you so much, Raman. It's been a great series 1 to 8. We'll continue into the next series, and thank you very much to our guests. I think if we counted out the number of guests, we've probably had around 20 to 30 guests over the 8 episodes, and we've covered off on all aspects of technology, from the MRO industry, as we have done today, 3D printing, cybersecurity, technical auditing standards, and a whole host of others. So thank you very much for joining us today and for the virtual educational series. We'll see you next week. Thank you very much to our panelists.
Wish everybody in advance Happy Independence Day on 15th of August.
Happy Independence Day, of course. Namaste.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.